That exploded a little bit.
Bepis, not sponsored.
Although we wish we were.
You know what? Any sponsor. Take a sponsor. This episode is actually brought to you by Raid Shadow Legend. No.
Sorry. I got one of those ready to play notifications like you get from your PlayStation when it's like ready to play. The menu. But I'm not downloading a game, so I was like, it says Springfield is ready for you.
You're going to The Simpsons.
Cool.
Welcome back to the Frame Rate Podcast.
It's not May. Go ahead, Trevor.
It's
not
keep
May.
doing it. And it's not Star Wars.
No. It's actually June. And that means that we're finally getting into the summer slate of movies.
Summer blockbusters. Obviously, that probably started with
Probably started with the Thunderbolts.
And Mission Impossible 8.
Yeah.
But Memorial Day is when it really kicks off. And
That's like usually the beginning
yeah.
of the summer slate.
Yeah, Memorial Day is what initiates summer.
Yeah.
Ushers it in.
Yeah.
Usher. Yeah.
Which means
Okay.
Oh my gosh. We the best music.
Lil Jon, we
got to see one of our most anticipated movies of the last year.
Can anyone take a guess? Quickly, pause the video right now. Go put in the comment what movie you thought we went and saw. Then come back to see if you were right. We'll wait. You're back? We saw the very first Saw movie. Were you correct?
Play a game.
No, we did not do that.
We went and saw.
He doesn't like horror movies.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a big fan of them either.
I don't know if I would consider Saw a horror movie.
Body horror.
It's just grotesque.
That's horrific to me.
The word or
No,
oh,
the concept.
it's true though. Anyways, we didn't watch Saw. We watched the How to Train Your Dragon
Dragons.
remake / live action.
A live action remake of the very first How to Train Your Dragon film, based very loosely off of the book of the same name.
Mm-hmm. And when I say that it was, at least speaking for me, I know that Trevor might have his own opinions, but for me, when I say it was the most anticipated movie, it was mainly because I've seen kind of how live actions have flopped.
Yeah,
recently.
everyone took it with literally less than a grain of salt.
Yeah, one singular grain.
If we were basing the anticipation solely off of the last live action remake to release, we were
the bar is set very, very low. Well, I guess the bar would be set high. Right?
No.
What am I trying to say? Because if the bar is set low, then it's easy to achieve. But if the bar is set high, then you have high expectations.
The bar would be set high if Lilo and Stitch was incredible.
Okay, so the bar was set low.
Yes.
Okay. Extremely low. Have you seen that one yet?
No.
Are you going to?
No.
Okay, good. So that's kind of where I came from, because I know that we say this just about every single movie we talk about, but this movie can properly sum up this movie and subsequent the movies that followed really kind of can sum up my childhood, because as Hiccup grew up, we also kind of grew up, right? By the time Hiccup's an adult, I also was an adult, because the last movie released 2020, 2019,
2019, I think.
right? I was graduated high school, and I was well into my adult life.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. That's why this movie kind of has always resonated with me, is because I don't know. Like this movie was kind of my childhood's movie. So going into this live action, I was like, all the live actions that we've had before this have kind of sucked. And I don't want to see this movie butchered in the same way, right? Because this movie, at least for me, I know it's also for you, but like for me, it's such a big thing. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it meant a lot to me as a kid.
And I was very scared, especially with like the load up and like I'll go on the record. I'm going to retract a lot of statements that I've officially said on this podcast and unofficially said off the podcast, like of things that I had a problem with for this movie. I'll retract all of those later. But like, what is, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was very scared for this movie because I was scared of it flopping.
Yeah. I thought when going into it that, like, if it didn't turn out great, that it probably could have been blamed on like one or two aspects of like filmmaking and not like
on the storyline
movie itself. Because from my understanding and just like from the marketing and everything, it seemed like this was going to be almost one for one the same. And the script for the original animated film is so good that as long as they're able to adapt that faithfully, this movie would be like,
just
good at worst.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping for at least good, and it came out great.
Yeah, it was really
Two thumbs up from Trevor. But
very good movie.
Like thinking about like, I don't remember when exactly it was announced that it was happening. I'm trying to remember.
Did it happen while you were on your mission?
Maybe. I don't remember.
No. I don't know. It might have been announced, but it didn't really like start to gain traction until after, because this was one of the movies. I know that we talked about before how Minecraft was the movie that kind of set up this whole idea for me and Trevor to do the podcast. I would say that the second movie, like Minecraft, and then subsequently this movie, were like the two movies that we were like, we should make a podcast so we can talk about these two.
The pillars of the Frame Rate Podcast. Our three-legged step stool. You cannot have one without the others. Star Wars. A Minecraft movie. And the live-action How to Train Your Dragon. You get rid of any one of those, this podcast is kaput.
But it didn't gain traction until after that, because I remember having very like conversations with you and being like, if we ever did this, that's for sure a movie we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And I remember like not even a month ago, they announced that they were in pre-production of How to Train Your Dragon 2. And I was like, this either means that this movie had like incredibly good test reviews and the studio felt confident enough to greenlight the second one before they even got any box office for the first one, or they're just counting on this movie making a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just have the second one ready to go.
And boy, did it.
Make money, or?
Well, it's already past
100 million.
It's already past what it spent.
Really?
Yeah.
How much did this movie cost?
I think it was 150.
That's incredible.
And it was, at least this is what I was reading.
Well, that's like way lower than I would have thought.
Take it all with a grain of salt.
Do you mind if I look up
go
the
ahead.
real number?
But I know I saw something today that said that it had, well, I guess now it's really gonna, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna look real stupid. But
no, you're right.
It was 100
total 250 million. 100 million in marketing and 150 million to make the movie.
Yeah.
Which like
but it's already
VFX cost. That's
I
way
think
lower than I would have thought.
I think it's already at like 189 is what I saw this morning. Like its opening weekend it brought in 189.
I thought it brought in 83.
It could be that. I think I swear I Saw somewhere this morning that
83.7, 83, 84.
it had passed its budget. Not its budget. It's spent.
I don't. If anybody knows, can somebody comment like a website that you get a live counter for box office numbers? Because that would be something I'd actually just like to have.
Be very beneficial for us.
Massively.
But
it's
regardless if it passes it or not, like
moolah.
They did it. Very good movie. Yeah. I guess like.
Let's get into the movie.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, if you haven't seen the original animated film, then spoiler warning for you. But that movie came out 15 years ago. So go watch that.
Yeah.
Then you can come back to this. But still spoiler warning for the live action film because they did change a few things.
They did change a couple things.
That we're going to talk about.
So the obvious question that I feel like everybody was asking in the lead up to this, I guess it's kind of just a universal question that's always asked when a live action is announced, and that is, why is this being made? I think the obvious reason is because cash, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
I think that the human race is, we talked about this last time, but with this movie, it kind of sets that a little more in stone. I think that the human race is getting less creative. And instead of coming up with new IPs that hope to capture the imagination like this one did, they're really like across the board. I feel like people are just trying to recapture the nostalgia and hope that that brings you in.
Yeah, but I think another part of that is a reason. Like, I think another huge reason why there's just been a lot of these remakes anyway is because like our generation is extremely nostalgic because of how rapidly the world has evolved from when we were in like childhood to now.
We've gone
definitely
through a lot
have
of
like
stuff.
Yeah, we have like feelings of longing for how it was when we were kids, and so these movie producers look at that and they're like, hey, like I see that like my kids and their friends talk about how much they love Lilo and Stitch. We should like bring that back. Right. And then they do. But then it like, they're now at a point like Disney at least where I don't feel nostalgia for the original Cinderella.
No.
But they made the Cinderella and Aladdin and Snow White and Beauty and the Beast. And
I think that Disney is just trying to capture the nostalgia in the wrong era of their movies.
I think they took the term that we coined that like the 90s, the Disney Renaissance era, and they're trying to have another one because the sales have been so poor.
Yeah.
And it's not working.
Like, I don't know.
I don't want a live action Moana. That movie's not even 10 years old. Anyway.
No, well,
we're talking about How to Train Your Dragon.
I was going to say, just to finish that point, I just feel like, because I feel like this is actually a very genuine thing, because so far Disney has been the only dog in the fight when it comes to live action. I don't think we were talking about this earlier. I don't think there's been another live action some
live action remake of a DreamWorks film.
Yeah.
I don't believe
so.
I
was just meaning across the board of like some children's movie that we liked. There hasn't been. Has there?
Did you not see the live action Romeo and Juliet?
No.
Dude, you gotta see that one.
But that's like my point is that like so far that realm has been dominated solely by Disney.
Yeah, they've been the only ones that really have had the money to do it.
So I think
have had IP old enough.
Yeah. So I think that like obviously why this, I think Universal wanted to get a little bit, because that's nowadays I don't know if it's been like this the entire time, but I mean, I know that's why DreamWorks started out originally, was out of spite for Disney.
Jeffrey Katzenberg got fired, and then Steven Spielberg told him to start his own studio.
And then he started Shrek and literally made fun of
Disney tropes, and it won. Yeah. It won the very first animated Oscar over Disney.
Yeah,
which applaud.
So these people have
Jeffrey
been,
Katzenberg.
these two companies have been like kind of fighting back and forth my entire life, right? So it just kind of felt like this was DreamWorks' attempt at their official, what am I trying to say? Like their official dog in the fight. Like, okay.
Put their hand in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like we now have two examples of live action remakes.
Yeah.
And
something to compare.
I'm very excited.
Are we
for
reviving the DreamWorks Disney rivalry?
Yeah, I'm very excited for the future.
Is this
going
to feel like Phase 2 MCU versus the DCEU?
Yeah, I'm very excited for this. Is what
lopsided
I'm going with that. But for obvious reasons, I feel like that's why this movie got a live action remake. I think I would probably, now that I've actually had a chance to spout my nonsense and think about it, I think I would agree a little more with yours. Obviously, there's money to be made in anything that captures the nostalgia, but because they're trying to chase, it's like chasing a high.
Kind of. I think like the reason I made that point was because it was directed by the exact same guy, Dean DeBlois.
Well, and John Powell came back, did the music.
Dean DeBlois actually has a really deep love for the franchise. And he feels very connected to the universe, and he wanted it to feel the same, if not better, than what he originally was able to make.
Right.
And so, like, you can, when you watch it, you can feel the love he has for the franchise in it because of how little he changed.
And so I guess like that really kind of, because it was so similar, that really kind of made expectations high, right? Like, and I think that was also part of the marketing they did, right? Because they did a lot of showing off, like the scenes that that are so key. Like that was what they did all of their commercials on, right? Like the speech that Astrid gives to Hiccup after Toothless has been taken by his father, like. That was probably up until they released the actual trailer of Test Drive. I'm pretty sure that was the longest trailer that they had. Was that one? Was like almost her entire monologue.
Yeah.
Right. So they really were like setting the expectations from us. Like, hey, it's the same movie, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Like we were saying, it's kind of pandering to nostalgia, which, obviously for people that look too far into it, they're like, they just make the same movie? I don't want to see that. I'll just watch the animated one, which I can agree with that. Which is why, I think, making changes is important, but not to the degree that, the live-action Dumbo and live-action Snow White did, where it's, an entirely different movie.
Right.
With just the same name.
Right.
So I think that fine line that needs to be followed for these live action remakes, especially ones like How to Train Your Dragon
that are so loved.
They're so beloved, and the scale of them.
If they were to mess up in any way, it would tank the movie and it would be a blot and a stain.
If you were to change the character of the characters.
If you were to remove Hiccup and Astrid's romance, or make the relationship even between Hiccup and his father more loving than it is, right? To kind of
or if it were to be more abusive and more hateful and
more disapproving.
I never wanted you as a son, or all of that kind of thing. It really felt like I was watching how it's portrayed in the animated film, but with more detailed and genuine human expression.
That was something that I actually thoroughly enjoyed, because that's obviously that's different. I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't really classify that as it's changed, right? But it's definitely different, right? Because you have animation versus, and not to mention the animation 15 years ago great. Like if you watch the first How to Train Your Dragon, it ages very well.
Yes. Obviously, would look much better today.
I was gonna say, you run into the same situation like the first Toy Story, and you see Sid's dog versus the cat in the most recent Toy Story.
You get like the eyes are kind of weird. It's harder to nail the same expressions, and like their teeth are way bigger and disproportionate, and
their hands are huge.
They're like I mentioned this to you beforehand, but like in the animated film, Hiccup is like designed to be way smaller than everything around him. Mm-hmm. Like you look at Stoic in the animated film,
Stoic is
and you're like, how did he come from him?
Yeah.
Like you would think this guy, like Hiccup, maybe like he could be scrawny, but
why isn't he
7 feet tall?
Yeah. So that was something that, like, I guess again, it's not a change, but I enjoyed a lot more about this one. That you naturally will nail with live action is that they did a good job at like conveying emotion.
Yes, I think I guess I briefly said, but like I think it's really in the eyes. Mm-hmm. That's definitely like the window to the soul and all of that. But even with like Toothless's design being exactly the same, just realistic compared to all of the other dragons being very different and looking a lot more realistic and reptilian. Mm-hmm. I think I saw a clip of the director talking about that, how they were trying to change it to make him look a little bit more realistic, but every single change that they were making, like they made the eyes a little smaller because no animal on the planet has eyes as big as that, and he like lost his personality because of that. They tried making the mouth a little smaller, same thing, lost his personality. So they just kept the same thing, and they made him look really good. I loved the way Toothless looked in this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that they even upped more of his expression. Like he's not as I
would agree.
I don't get. I mean, I know that you said that you hadn't seen the original animated film in a while, but I think the comparison, because with that speech that Astrid makes, is when Hiccup says that he didn't kill Toothless when he had the opportunity to because he looked at him and he saw himself. And they made it more in the live action one. Toothless felt, at least to me, in my first watch, that he felt a little bit more mature than in the original animated one. He still definitely was like
playful.
Playful and like, a pet, like a dog, cat, panther mix. Mm-hmm. But it's just like trying to remember with the original animated one, he felt a little bit like he was younger than Hiccup. Mm-hmm. Like he felt more like he was like a baby. Mm-hmm. Like he was like a preteen kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Just with the way how he was expressive compared to the live action one. But I actually really appreciated that because this definitely had a more like mature, well, probably more so because of like the color or whatever. It definitely felt more like a mature version of the film.
Yeah, no, like, and that was something that I kind of got from it too. But they didn't lose that playfulness either, right? And what I talked about was one of my favorite scenes. Because the hard thing about this movie is that you're going to compare it to the first. I mean, you do that with any live action remake. Yeah. You're like, how does it stack up against the original? Well, I don't know. To kind of preface where I'm going with this, right? I talked about how like these movies as they released were me growing up, right? And I got the same vibes and I had the exact same expectation with this one, right? Like, okay, I'm much older now and I'm trying to relive part of my childhood, but I no longer have that childhood innocence that I had before, right? And I feel like that's something that I really enjoyed, talking about maturity and all that stuff, that they did really well in this, is that they captured that. Like, it felt like the movie was made for a 25-year-old who was trying to feel 12 again, right? Where like, yeah, remember this? Remember how playful this was? But also, here's some serious undertones that you now as an adult are going to understand a lot better than had we tried to do that in the first one.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the probably the scene that conveyed that singular message the most was the, what's the song name? We were just listening to it. The
Forbidden Friendship.
Forbidden Friendship. Right. That entire scene, because it's longer.
Yeah. They fleshed out the friendship of Hiccup and Toothless way more.
And I feel like because they took the time to do that, it wasn't so much of like a I just met you at the playground kind of friendship versus like you're broken, I broke you, I'm trying to fix you, but also I want to be your friend. I can't kill you, right? Like, because I felt like in the animated film, it was that I just found you on this toy slide and you want to be best friends, you know, versus I'm sorry for what I did. Here is me trying to make up for that.
Yeah, they made like the whole like dragon training sequence at least they made it feel way longer. Like it took place over like 2 months. That like there was a lot of development of each character learning about dragons, and like Hiccup having to be way more secretive about sneaking into the woods to see Toothless and to like make his designs, because like you had like there was probably a good like 30 minutes after all of the adults went on the boats where you didn't see an adult other than Gobber.
Yeah.
It was all of just the kids during the dragon training for the Trial of the Flame, which is a change. They gave it a name.
Yeah. So that's what I would say, like in regards to the changes, because there's a lot of them, and they're not like big. They're not big changes. There's a lot of them, probably a good amount of them we probably didn't catch, or two, we won't have time to cover them because there's a good amount. But I felt like it just generally, like I felt like what I said, where the changes were made because it's now like, and I'm probably am reading into it a little too much. I doubt probably that this is the message that they were going for and they were just trying to recapture. But it genuinely felt like to me like it was an adult perspective looking back through the lens of your childhood, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of scenes in there and a lot of these changes where I was like, you know, I'm so glad that it's not goofy and funny and that they fleshed out I feel miserable or I feel like a failure versus just trying to make it comedic, right?
Yeah. It like I think that this version of How to Train Your Dragon is just an emotionally mature retelling of the story. Because hardly anything like at the root of the plot is different. The script is almost exactly the same, but it's just the way that it's shot and the way that the characters act that just elevates it a little bit more.
Yeah. And overall, I actually really enjoyed that. I typically with things like this, when they change anything, I usually have big complaints, and this is where I'll retract my first statement, my first retraction. I will be completely honest, I was not a fan of Astrid, right? Not that I'm like anti that, right? But it was like she didn't have the same like resemblance, and her attitude and like the way that the actress kind of like played herself wasn't like that playful angry that you see in the first film, right? So I was not very happy about that. And I'll go on the record and say that I was wrong. I was wrong about all of it, right? Completely wrong. I was wrong about the twins. I was wrong about Astrid, right? Like, even Gobber at the very beginning of the movie, I hated him. I did not like him. But as I watched the movie, like, as we went further into the movie, I was like, I take it back. This is all great. The casting, like, I was skeptical at first, but they were perfect.
Yeah.
And like, tip of the hat from me, like, they did phenomenal. And they probably had so much pressure and so much weight on their shoulders. And
especially
if
when
by
they're
any
like
chance,
so young.
if by any chance that this makes it to them, bravo. Like, you guys did the most perfect job at recapturing this movie that I loved and making it very well.
Yeah, I think, like, as you were talking about, like, Astrid, I think she had the most of a bit of like a character change of all of them. Because like I had said earlier, they hardly did that like at all. But I think with her, they actually, like, they made her like not playful angry like she was in the first one, and just like more grounded in reality, where, like, obviously she has like the same speech about how our parents' war is about to become ours and all of that. But the scene in the dining hall after like one of the like the first training sessions, they added a scene between Hiccup and Astrid where they actually have a conversation where Astrid kind of almost vents to Hiccup about why she has distaste for him in this whole competition and whatnot. But like it goes from her saying that she comes from nothing to Hiccup saying that he's a disappointment. And you don't necessarily see it on her face, a change or anything, but she goes from being like grilling him about how he's privileged for being the son of the chief and all of that, and about how he gets to live in this nice house, to when he says that he's a disappointment and he doesn't have a mom.
And that she's everything that his dad hoped for.
Yeah. She just kind of pauses and just says, stay out of my way. And then from then on, that's when you really start to see it, like, really start to evolve until eventually she discovers his secret. And like the changes, like hardly any, but the subtle changes they made to the romantic flight scene, that's like a top 3 scene in the movie for me. Not necessarily just the live action one, but like the quick character development, the character that you see of both, like, of Hiccup, Astrid, and Toothless, all 3 of them there, I think is beautiful.
Well, and the timing, I'm going to talk about timing. I have to throw this in and everything, right? Like, in the animated film, like, you feel like, I don't know, now that I'm an adult, I feel like they get to point A and they get from point A to point B really quick when it comes to them falling in love. Like, she hates him, she flies on his dragon, and she's like, I love you now, right? The live action, I feel like they did a really good job of kind of just being like the, I hate you, but
you're not so bad.
You're okay, right? And I don't know, does she kiss him on the cheek in the first one?
Yeah,
that one that interaction I thought was great, right? And that's something that obviously it just comes from having actual actors there. But like, when it comes to that scene, I would agree with everything you said, where like it just feels a little more real, right? And like, I've fallen in love with my wife.
Really?
It was not that quick, but the relationship was the same, right? My wife didn't hate me, but we were very playful. Like, the way we
boyfriend and girlfriend.
Well, the way that we met was because, like, the first time I hung out with Grace, she was mean to me. She was very mean. She put me in my place, and she was like,
stood up.
She was a grade A jerk, and like, she knows this.
You keep going.
She knows this, but She was mean. And I, for some reason, was like, I like that. Right? Girls aren't mean anymore. They're not like, I don't know. It sounds really stupid, but like there was something to that. And that's kind of why I enjoy this relationship so much.
You would have not survived in the 50s, friend.
Like, it just was, I don't know. I was like, that's not that I'm drawing a parallel between my wife, although sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes I feel like I am Hiccup and she is Astrid. That was something that I kind of like was naturally drawn to this because I was like, this relationship has been like that playful, mean fighting, like weird, like I hate you, but you're kind of cool tension. And I felt like Hiccup throughout the entire movie. Like everything Astrid did, he was like, whoa. And she's like, what are you looking at? That's literally like textbook how my first like 2 or 3 months dating my wife was. What are you looking at? You. I mean, right? Get out of my way, Tristan. Okay.
Yeah.
So that stupid tangent, but that was something that I actually really appreciated a lot in the live action versus the original.
Yeah, I think like this will be the last thing I will say at least about the romance. But I think that the way they go about it in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, I guess in the first one, at least to me, to my recollection, is like really unique to movies because he sweeps her off her feet on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just trying to protect himself and protect Toothless by just trying to prove his point to her, but he just happens to do it on the day of a gorgeous sunset and the Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if I can add to that, I do also really like
Aurora Borealis.
I really like when he's like, I guess I'm not really in control. And she's like, okay, I'm sorry, Toothless. Like, for some reason, like in this live action, that hit harder than it did in the original movie.
Yeah, because it actually started, like, really, because, you know, you got more of the feeling from live action Astrid that, like, she, like everyone else, hates dragons because of what they've done to the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out the Minnesota Vikings.
My favorite part of the movie was Justin Jefferson.
He totally mossed Snotlout, bro. Incredible. The catch of his life. Anyway, back to romance. Like, she apologized to the dragon when we could clearly tell that in her eyes, she would not personify them in any way.
Yeah.
They were animals, and she needed to slaughter them like animals. She hates them.
And you dang it. You beat me to it. I hate dragons. They're coarse, rough, and irritating.
They get everywhere. They take my sheep.
One thing that I do want to actually shed some light, I know that we've talked about it a little bit, like in regards to the live action look of the dragons. We kind of only touched on Toothless.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about not only the live action dragons, but like the live action Burke. Like, oh man, was it good. I from the beginning, like I thought the one dragon that I've always hated, I don't know what it's called. It's the 2-headed one.
The Zippleback.
Yeah, I've never really been a fan of that one. So disregarding that one, because it looked good. I think that one looked the most like the original. That one was, out of all of the dragons, I feel like that one was changed the least.
It felt like they just had put like a realistic filter
But
over
the other ones, like the
Gronkle,
yeah.
They changed it into a pug. The pug version.
And I loved it. From the moment I saw it on the screen, like back in my mind,
you know what
I was like, that thing is cute.
It looked like a freaking Ogdo Bogdo.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
They put the Octopocto in How to Train Your Dragon and made it eat rocks.
From the moment that I saw that one, like that one stole the spotlight as like the cutest one there. I was
I liked
that one
it didn't have like that huge underjaw like it did in
no,
the animated
that
one.
had a little snout,
that, like prominent nose. They pretty much like smashed its face in.
Yeah.
Turned it into a pug.
Yeah. It seemed the most like a dog. As someone who owns a velociraptor that eats everything, like
this is true.
That reminded, but like the Zippleback, I loved how it looked like a chicken. Had very chicken-like like it. But my favorite, I only know it as the Flaming Death.
The Monstrous Nightmare was the one that sets itself on.
Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, but like there's a photo that they've released that shows like their process in making that one into live action. So there's like 3 pictures. It's when there's an interview. I'll show it to you later, but there's an interview where they're talking to him about how they went about making these, and this photo pops up as he's like giving his like speech onto that, like the director.
Yeah.
And like there's 3 photos. And they're all the scene when Hiccup is fighting it at the very end, and it comes out and it's like standing, and you can see like Stoic in the back,
Yeah.
They show the first photo is the animated one, and then it's their first phase of live action, and then it's their final, right? So like you don't see the nit and gritty of it, but you see like their process. And the director says something along the lines of, "I wanted to convey the same feel and the same like look, but I wanted to make them unique and not the same, right? And I wanted to make them realistic."
Yeah.
So
I had seen probably a different interview just about like the one I mentioned about him changing Toothless and stuff, like how they wanted it to be like more like animal. They wanted it to feel more animal and real.
Well, in this photo, like that middle one, the middle one is like it's got the same look as like it looks like it's the same dragon, and they just put like a realism filter on it, and then they showed the one where it actually is, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I loved that one. Was the best looking for me. Like it when it catches itself on fire and it looks like it's dripping lava, right? Like that one, that was cool. That was easily my favorite one in live action.
Yeah, I just really liked how Snotlout rode it like it was a Harley. He had a hog.
Yeah, but I really liked like the look of that one's face, because that was always one that I thought looked really ugly, and I didn't like. That one I liked the least in the animated film, versus that's the one I liked the most in live action.
Yeah.
But enough on the dragons. Like the making of Burke.
Yeah,
that was
I'm
really
not
good.
Like I'm sure that it is, but I'm not actually positive how much of it was like on site shooting, like on location.
I mean,
because just from like, going off of memory and what it looked like, it seemed like they just designed what it was in the animated film and made it live action. It looked the same. So I'm sure that like some of the scenes where they're like on just the cliffs.
Yeah, that's like shot up in Ireland.
Yeah, I bet like those were actually shot on location. But I think that like a lot of the places are actually in Burke, like I wouldn't like I would be not surprised in the slightest if the volume was used in this one. I got the vibe that some of the things might have been.
Yeah. Like,
unfortunately, having an eye for it just means that like a lot of movies are like kind of ruined for you in a way.
Yeah, it's like the new green screen. If you know what to look for, you see it. But it's real. That's something I will say. It's really, if they did use it, like there's a couple scenes where you're like, it could be used here. I don't know if it was. It could. Versus like what green screen where you're like, but
I think the compositing in the movie was really, really great. I remember telling you this after we got out of the movie, but like the live action characters are constantly touching and grabbing animated dragons, and it looks like they are touching and grabbing and falling on top of and falling off of real things. Looks great.
Yeah. I liked the set pieces. I'm a really big fan of Vikings and Viking culture. My family lines come from that, so I've spent a lot of time in my latter adult years just kind of researching not only my family lines and that, but kind of just like the culture, because I really enjoy that. That's like one of my favorite eras of history.
Little side note, but once when I was like 14, I had like a dream of becoming a hotel manager, and that hotel was like a Viking village, and like all of them were like huts and like had like the intricate woodworking on the outside. And there was like a giant bonfire in the middle. Idea. But don't know where I would do that anyway.
So, but what I'm going with that is that I really liked the set pieces, right? I liked that I don't know if they do this in the first film. I'm sure they do, but like they give praise to Odin and Thor. I thought that was really unique. That like, because they're Vikings, that's naturally what they believe in. I don't remember that much from the first film.
Me neither. I don't know if they.
That was like a nice.
Any, like,
that was like
religious.
That was like a nice subtle like tie into like grounding it in realism, right? Like, and they're not like, we pray to Odin and we slaughter animals and cover ourselves in their blood, right? But they have like the runes. The runes are shown in the animated film.
Yes, the language,
right? But
what's on the shields and all that.
Just like the subtle mentions of those, I was like, cool. They grounded that. But I really liked like the wooden sculptures and the boats. I really loved the long boats. The long boats. I'm a sucker for a good long boat, man.
Bring back oars.
Yeah.
We still have oars.
But I don't know. I think that it stood out really well. They made a very good one-to-one real replica of things you see in an animated film, which I feel like gets missed a lot.
I think that as of now, that this remake will stand the test of time. I think that like come far in the future, if you were to ask like, hey, you want to watch How to Train Your Dragon? And if someone were to ask like, oh, like the animated or live action, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
I'd feel the same.
Yeah.
Either way.
I think honestly, I think if someone were to ask me, I would almost say I'd rather watch the live action one.
Who knows? Might leaning into that.
I've only seen it once.
Like my hope, I guess, right before, like here at the end of our episode today, but like my hope is that number 2, I know that like they've at least now announced that there will be changes to it. I'm hoping that like that one can land just as good as this one did, because obviously if number 2 doesn't land very well, or
we don't get number 3
bad, not only will we not get number 3, but it might ruin number 1. You might not want to watch number 1 because you'd be like, oh, the sequel's so bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I hope for that. I hope for a good How to Train Your Dragon 2 live action to help support a very strong showing for the first one.
Well, real quick before we end, we got to get to the natural questions that everyone's going to ask. I feel like we've covered like our overall like impression of the movie. We both really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had a single thing negative to say, and I don't know if there is anything negative I have to say. But
there's always negative things, but
yeah, you could pick
this
it
was
apart.
Mostly the.
Would you recommend it?
Yes, I would recommend this.
Would you is it like a highly recommend or like a recommend?
If someone were to ask me at the end of this episode, if someone were to watch this and be like you made it sound like it was really good, do you think I should go watch it? I would be like, yeah, you should. I think this is worth spending your money to go see in a theater.
I would agree. I would give it like my personal rating. I said it at the theater and I stand by it. I give this movie a solid 9 out of 10. The only reason why it's not a 10 out of 10 is because I've seen the movie before and it isn't new.
Yeah, I think I'm right with you. I would give this a 9, if not like closer, like a 9.3 or something.
Yeah.
But only because I've only seen it once.
Mm-hmm.
Once I see it again, I will happily like have like a solid, like, this is how I feel about this movie. Probably won't change.
Mm-hmm. And it just sets it
approved.
It does very good. And I think it was a good movie. I always appreciate a good nostalgia grab.
Yep.
If it's done right. But thanks for listening. If you made it this far, go watch this movie. It's a very good movie. If by chance you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I loved it. I would recommend it highly.
Don't go into it comparing it to the animated one.
Yeah, just have fun with it, is what I would say.
Use your love for the animated one as your base for your love for this one.
Yep.
But go follow us on social media. Just look up Frame Rate Podcast on anything, and you will find us.
Mm-hmm.
Share what we post. Share this episode.
Share the podcast.
Sharing is caring. Join us next week when we talk about Barney the Purple Dinosaur. Wah, wah, wah.